Good morrow to you all. You have fallen on barred times.
Brought to you by RHUL Shakespeare Society.
You've joined me, Cassie Dixon.
And me, Jack Hardman, as we bear some bardy truths.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bard Times. I'm your host, Jack Hardman, and joining me this week is our friend, the wonderful man, Theo Duddridge. Hello, Theo. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
That's okay. That's okay. It's good to hear you're doing well. So, Theo, this term you are acting as Polonius in Hamlet, and as per every week, I have to ask, how's that going?
It's going really well. I think we're in the last couple of weeks of rehearsal now before we can record. Eleanor and Kate just put up the latest rehearsal schedule. I'm called a lot. But I'm really enjoying the process. I'm really looking forward to recording and seeing the piece come together.
Yeah, because obviously you worked as a DSM on Iphigenia, which is a project we were both on, and an audio drama. And I believe you were in Shakespeare Society's version of Macbeth.
I was playing Banquo.
So, kind of, how do you find voice acting versus normal acting?
I think with Macbeth, so we'll start chronologically, that was a project that I think was set up in place of the third term show because, of course, the lockdown happened and it was just something for people to do. And there'd be a schedule put up. We record for like an hour, a couple of hours a day. With certain days off to like go through scenes and stuff. I think we went through each scene roughly twice before we recorded it. And from an acting point of view, it was quite nice to have like a lot of time to get stuff done. We'd send off the recordings. If we needed to re-record stuff, we could. And we could try new things. And it was very much, you could really get to play around with it. Sort of like when you rehearse a scene each time, you can play around with the different dynamics of it. A director can tell you to do something differently. You can kind of try things out, or if you've thought about stuff, you can incorporate that. With Iphigenia, I was editing that one, but it was a very similar thing with some of my experience in Macbeth. You sort of tell the cast to submit stuff to you by a certain time, they record stuff, and then it was quite nice with Iphigenia because there was also music incorporated as well by Matteo. So each scene had music kind of underscoring it, even if there wasn't necessarily singing involved, because we had a chorus and they sung. It was really cool. And it was just a really nice project. It was different from Macbeth, but both were very fun kind of lockdown projects to be a part of. And it's just some of my favorite memories from sort of late first year, early second year.
How does that then compare with what you will be recording with Hamlet? Because as far as I understand it, you're not just recording your voice and the audio, you're also recording a visual aspect of it as well.
Yeah, so with Hamlet, we're going to be given, I think, the scene by scene breakdown. I've been told about one of my scenes so far and certain like shot requirements, like recording against a white background for most of it, having to walk into shot, like different angles and stuff like that. Like, I think it's very much blocking in terms of where you're going to be filmed against just sending in your voice sort of generally. But again, with that, you can send in multiple takes and the editors can pick which ones they want to kind of interlink together. So I think it's nice to actually be doing something physical. And again, it's a different type of project given the current circumstances of where theatre is at the minute and where we are in the world.
And so obviously as a physical project, how much have you found it different to say doing a normal play and acting in a normal play? Is it a lot more focus on smaller gestures? Is it more almost film related than theatre related?
Because you're having to perform in front of a camera, I've always felt, and this is just for me playing Polonius, I haven't had to move around as much, but I try and do like different hand gestures, have different stances, and try and sort of move around when we're rehearsing. But I think when we go to record, that's when I can really play around with movements, because obviously I won't have my script. I will I will just be going at it and kind of playing around with gestures and stuff. We've sort of been given the freedom to kind of experiment with stuff, and Eleanor and Kate can kind of guide us in sort of their direction as well.
So as well as doing this term, you have done many projects over your time at RHUL Holloway. You've done stuff with Shakespeare, lots of stuff with Shakespeare. Actually, lots of stuff with Shakespeare. Now I'm thinking about it. I think you've done.
Just had a mind flash there. Just like, oh my god, there's so many. Go through them if you want.
But you've done stuff with, I believe, Student Workshop and Matt B. You've also done some stuff with Drama Soc. I wanted to see what your opinion of kind of getting involved with as many societies as possible is, and what, say, if there are any first years listening, or for any first years that listen to this in the future, what advice you'd give to them in terms of throwing themselves into as many societies as possible. Or, of course, also you've done stuff with players.
Yeah. So speaking from my experience in first year, and again, I think this year in particular has been very different. And like I feel like it's sort of harder to get into online events because it's very similar to like turning up to a lecture on Zoom or Teams or whatever. But going back to the good old days, I guess you could say, back before this time. Going back to my time in first year, I sort of knew if I wanted to get involved in anything, I'd already have to sort of throw myself in there and just kind of take anything that kind of comes my way. And that's sort of what I did in first term of first year. I auditioned for 4 shows, got recalled for 2, made it into 1, which was Coriolanus, and that's kind of how I found my footing for Shakespeare Society. But I got memberships to all the other societies that I auditioned for. So I auditioned for MTS, Student Workshop, and Drama Soc. And each one of those offered several different opportunities. So we were both involved in the Winter Showcase that happened.
Of course, yeah.
Year. That was really fun. Like you said before, I did Matt B in my first term of first year, and I really enjoyed the process for that. I also did it again in the summer. It was in the summer before term started, and that again, it was a different format because it was online, but it was filmed and it was really good. Drama Soc I did Unseen in my first term of first year. I also put forward a piece in second term, but then
the world fell to pieces. But how do you think that's then benefited you as an actor and a performer and just a theatre maker in general?
It's allowed me to get experience of different directors, different actors, and just in general absorb a lot of new information. Because I want to have a go at directing something before I leave Holloway. I've said this every term, and I've never put myself forward for anything yet. But I think, just to summarize everything, just get involved with as much as possible, even if you don't necessarily think you'll like it straight away. If you see a production going that you're not familiar with in the slightest, audition for it, because it might be something that you can go in, be honest and say, not gonna lie, don't know what this is about, but I like your concept, I like what you've got, and I'm really interested in doing it. And if you put forward a good audition and you get cast and you have a really good time, then you'll really start to kind of find your way into societies as a whole.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think one of the plays exactly like that I did actually this term is Iphigenia. I had never heard of Iphigenia. I had no idea what it was about. I'd never done Greek theatre. I'd never done an audio play. And I was like, oh, I could learn some things. Maybe I could learn some things. Maybe I won't. And then it was a great time. It was an amazing time. We love that show. But yeah, so you have also DSM'd quite a few shows on campus now. I was wondering whether you could give us a rundown as to the role, what it entails, and generally what drew you to it, what keeps drawing you to it.
Okay. I'll explain the origin story first and then go into the role. When I first started really getting into theatre, sort of around sort of year 9, year 10, I joined my very first theatre company. It's a theatre company called Act 2. They're lovely. and I kind of started to learn a bit about backstage roles. One of them was the role of the DSM. Usually in sort of live theatre, the DSM kind of comes in towards the end of the process, watches these shows, or takes note on various kind of like cues from the script, and so on and so forth. And then on sort of tech day, they go in, technician kind of sets the lights, and the DSM goes in and kind of programs them. So that's how I knew the role. But then, and we're going to bring up some old memories, Jack. This was, I believe it was the ANAT launch night, and I was sat having a drink of a VK. I think it was a VK. And you come over to me and you're like, Theo, I want you to be on my bid for a show. I want you to be the DSM. And I turned around to you, really confidently said, no, I'm good. So cut to like a couple of conversations later, I agree to be on this team. Same
After
night.
begging him and begging him and begging him, eventually he said yes. Yeah.
I was like, well, I think I was with a friend at the time, and they were just like, oh, you said you wanted to get into like theatre and stuff, then this would be a really good chance to like experiment with backstage stuff, see if you're into it. And I was like, you know what, sure, I'll do it. So I put myself down, and we had a lovely crew. We spent many nights working on
we did what you should never do for a bid, which is spend just the most amount of kind of late nighters working on a bid pack. Don't do that. Do it during the day when you're awake and competent. Don't do it at night.
No matter what changes came our way, we were willing to adapt. Didn't get through, but I remember finding out as a group and being like, you know what? I really liked working with you guys. If we get a chance to work on something again, that'd be great. So cut forward to like the last week of term one. I think it was the day before Unseen. And I get a call from you because you've just had a meeting with the previous president. And you say, Theo, I got a bid, and I want you to be on it. And I just said, I said, absolutely, I'd love to be on this team. And this was when Love Savers Lost. The crew started coming together. Since then, I've done a couple of things. I did a production of Romeo and Juliet in sort of December time. I co-DSM'd alongside one of the many DSMs who taught me the role of being a DSM, the lovely Rosie Addison Dunn.
She's wonderful.
Again, Shakespeare alumni. She's lovely. Really hope she watches this. You got a free shout out. Hope you're proud of that. Nice. Rosie, we love you. But no, as you said before, I did DSMing for Iphigenia, although it was more editing than DSMing. And I'm on another bid, so I might be DSMing again, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But
fingers crossed. Good luck with that.
Fingers crossed. Thank you. But yeah, on to the more important topic, the role of the DSM itself. In terms of the RHUL Holloway side of it, because DSMs at RHUL Holloway aren't like the DSMs I mentioned earlier. You essentially are a number of roles. Mainly you kind of work alongside the director, sort of in rehearsals, and you take notes of lighting and sound as kind of you usually do. But you also are in charge of kind of making rehearsal schedules, kind of sorting out clashes and stuff, and just kind of being someone fairly close to the director. I in some aspects, the director can kind of call on you when they want. I know for Love's Labour's Lost, I sort of was there at pretty much every rehearsal. I had a couple of rehearsals off to like do something else that came up.
Yeah, reasonably to have a bit of a break. No, well, on Love Labours, I do have to say, I think I may have overused you, but also it was a wonderful thing. From what I've seen of, obviously I've never been a DSM, so I'm talking somewhat out of my behind here, but it is kind of like you're the schedule. You're the organizer, as well as the kind of lights and sound designer, as well as, if need be, a bit of a kind of assistant director. You're kind of lots of things. But I think certainly as a director, what a large part of the DSM's role is Well, at least the way that we work together is you keep me sane.
But
But how would you say, what is the most important trait you would say is part of being a good DSM?
definitely organization. When you DSM for the first time, especially at RHUL Holloway, they do talk you through it, whichever venue you're in. I was lucky enough to be in the SU, and they have club lighting. So it was really nice to kind of go up to the lighting box, have one of the technicians kind of talk you through the lights and stuff. And we had a very like basic kind of set of light. We had like the colorful strobes at the start, and then we had like various kind of yellows and blues that kind of came up, and then we had effects for keep hauling. That was a fun lighting set thing. I just had to stand there and be like, okay, stand by, cue, cue, cue. Very good, very good. That's all. Okay, cue, and then that was it. But yeah, in short, organization and I guess creativity. I guess teamwork as well. Teamwork, again, in any role, any show is very important. But yeah, just communication, organization, creativity.
Amazing. Okay, so I think that's enough of talking about you.
I'll see myself out then.
and we'll move on to the news of the week, which is actually about you. So we're going to keep talking about you. I'm lying to you. So the news this week is we have another series of Shakespeare and Dungeons of Dragons coming out, and I want to ask you kind of about D&D in general, because obviously you are, I DM'd the last one, you are going to DM this one, you're going to be the dungeon master for it, for those people not already indoctrinated into the religion that is D&D. I want to basically start by asking you, what drew you to D&D?
So I've sort of thought about this for a while. D&D has always kind of been partly on my mind, probably since around like year 13, but it was something that I never really wanted to get into at the time because I just knew it was a big commitment. Hearing stories of games going on for so long. But over the summer, I was kind of doing some just light Googling about it. And then at the same time, I got a message on like a group chat I was a part of with one of my friends wanting to run a game. And I was like, I really want to have a go at running my own. I really want to like be a dungeon master for a game. And I went into D&D as a dungeon master rather than as a player, which is fun, but also quite risky. So cut forward to Christmas of, it was like Christmas last year, I think. I DM'd my first game. It was horrible. I say it was horrible. It was fun, but very chaotic because I didn't read the rules going into it. So I planned out this railroaded adventure that lasted no longer than 2 hours. And I had to keep asking other players how the rules worked. Like combat was very much me just trying to headcanon math, and it just wasn't working. But it was fun, and I could kind of carry my way through it. Like it was fine. I've learned now the rules, and I can do them. But I looked back, and I was just like, I really should have read up more before going into it. But I was eager. The energy was there. But that carried most of that.
But is there something in particular that drew you to playing it though? Not just the circumstances around it?
I think it was just the idea of a game where you could make it whatever you wanted it to be. It's like, if you've ever had an idea for a story set in the same universe as something else, or like an idea for a video game, or an idea for, a series of books or films or whatever. With D&D, you can kind of make that happen, and not necessarily like make every single action happen, but you can invite players into your world. They can change the course of, big situations, big parties, big events in this world. you of course can provide an overarching story, but your players in turn have their own mini stories in that. And as a DM, you can work those in and even, even collaborate with them, and they may give you something which you never thought of, and you might be like, I really like this. And then there's a very satisfying feeling in D&D where you either set something up or like certain outcomes go in a certain way, and the payoff just makes your players go, whoa. And it's so good when that happens. But, cut forward sort of from first time I DM'd to around about, this is right, Jack, this is going to be old. So this time last year, we would have done session 0 of Will's campaign.
Yeah, friend of the podcast, Will Lawson. He ran a game with the two of us. My first time doing anything properly involved in D&D. I think it was your first time as a player as well.
Yeah.
And we basically played a game for ages. I think for me, the thing that drew me into that and wanting to do that is, as you say, it's this idea of it's the same draw as video games. It's kind of being able to experience a story and being immersed within it. It's kind of like watching a film, but the film reacts to your own kind of whatever you do. And but it's almost like if you wanted to play a video game that you could do whatever you wanted, that is Dungeons and Dragons. But why do you think, is there any particular reason you think people should give D&D a go?
I think, especially from like an acting point of view, it's a nice kind of exercise to really kind of hone your skills as an improviser, both if you're in the shoes of the dungeon master or the player, because either one, you're playing a character or multiple characters at once. You've really got to think about what your characters would do. There is the technical side when it comes to like rolling dice and stuff, which kind of makes the game element quite fun. But, I think especially now, D&D has become something that's quite profitable, especially with series such as Critical Role. What was it? The one that you like, Dimension 20, I think it is.
Yeah.
A couple of other D&D online games that people have that have been streamed, and there's an active audience for that. Like, people enjoy watching the dungeon master tell the story. They enjoy the players play their characters. I never really got into Critical Role, but I know a lot of people who have, and I've seen clips and I get the hype behind it. But yeah, I think because it's become, also because of the mainstream shows kind of mentioning it, such as Stranger Things, I guess that's another thing that kind of drew me to it as well, like the concept of the game from Stranger Things.
Yeah, I think there's certainly the same draw of watching TV. I think it's just people playing. Like, the reason why it's so popular at the moment is there's a lot of shows that are very successful based around D&D because people like to watch characters play around in a world, and it's completely unscripted, and that's exciting, I think. In terms of why I would, and why I have continued to do it, is because, one, it's great fun. It's amazing fun. It's a great time to just spend time with your friends without, especially over lockdown when there's not a lot you can actually do with people. It's a great way to kind of shake things up and do something that's different. Even if it's just trying it once, I couldn't recommend it more to people. But as an actor as well, I couldn't agree with you more that it is very helpful for your ability to improvise, especially as a dungeon master. There's the chance that your players decide to have a full-blown conversation with someone who literally didn't exist before 5 minutes ago, is so high, and it requires the skill set of just like, okay, well, here we go, let's do this thing. And kind of need that confidence with it. And it is very helpful for, I mean, it's helpful for podcasting, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And just being able to ramble. But yeah, I think that's great, and I can't wait to be in and then edit this upcoming Shakespeare Dungeons and
gonna be
Dragons
fun.
project. It's going to be a
fun.
great time. It's going to be a great time. So, on that note, I think we'll end it here for today. Before you go, I do have to ask you one very important question. It's a question we ask every week, and it is whether you will be thrown off the show or not.
Yes, I can answer that right now. Yes, I will.
I need to know, what is your favourite Shakespeare play?
So, my favourite Shakespeare play is Macbeth. I had a concept for it that I wanted to try and piece together a while back, but I've never really had the time to do it. But it was sort of one of the first Shakespeare plays I really properly, fully read in depth as a GCSE, and it's one that, you know, has always kind of come back in some way, shape, or form, whether it be for like a monologue that I've had to use for drama, or if I'm doing, you know, looking for inspiration for fantasy.
Fair play. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me this week for Bard Times. Thank you, Theo, for coming on the show.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. No, thank you so much for coming. This has been your host, Jack Hardman. Stay safe, and in the words of the Bard himself, suit the actions to the words and the word to the action.